Hello and welcome to the Crypto Masters, helping the general public to master an understanding of crypto assets. My name is Brian McCoy.
And my name is Ross Eaton.
And we are the Crypto Masters.
It sounded good on my end.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Hopefully it's good.
We'll wait for the published podcast then to see. But let's get started on today's episode. Today, Ross, we're going to cover two coins. I think this is our first time covering two coins, and both of them are forks. So today is Fork Day. Today's topics are Bitcoin Cash, BCH, and BitcoinSV, BSV. So as a reminder, our goal is to provide information about crypto assets to help the public make investment decisions in the crypto space. We don't try to predict short-term price movements, so this show is not for short-term traders.
We provide information about different crypto assets to allow you, the listeners, to make your own investment decisions. This is not financial advice.
All right. On episode 1 of the Crypto Masters, we discussed Bitcoin, as I call it, the granddaddy of crypto. Today, you'll learn that it literally is a granddaddy. We're discussing two of its offspring, Bitcoin Cash, and then its offspring, BitcoinSV.
Yep. So we've got, Bitcoin Cash, the abbreviation BCH. You've had to have heard of it by now.
And or sometimes Bcash, sometimes Bcash.
Oh, Bcash. I do like Bcash. It kind of rolls off your tongue.
There it is.
And we're also doing Bitcoin SV, which stands for Satoshi's Vision. Kind of a cool name, a little ode to Satoshi Nakamoto there.
That is deep. I like it.
So yeah, let's jump into it, Brian. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, so like I said, we've talked about Bitcoin before. And that's the obvious starting point when you're talking about different crypto coins and tokens. So hopefully our listeners have heard that podcast, but even if they haven't, we'll do a lot of comparisons today when we talk about the contrasts and comparisons among and between Bitcoin, BCH, and BSV.
Yeah, so, our third podcast, we talked about Litecoin. Which is a fork of Bitcoin. And just a quick reminder of what a fork is. I always kind of think of it in a couple key aspects. Like what's involved in fork. One, it's, there's talks about being changes to the code. And that's really kind of the main thing I think of. And kind of two parties are deciding which route we're going to go. Which route are we going to go for update? That results in a fork. One cool feature of a fork is if you've got, let's say you have 100 Bitcoins and Bitcoin forks, you'll also have 100 tokens coins in the new cryptocurrency. Brian, does that mean you'll have the same same value of coins?
Not the same value, but yes, on the same amount.
Yes. And we'll show some figures on that later of how, differing the amounts are when they do split. But yeah, typically, forks happen when there's a group of developers. They want to make a change down the road, and they kind of have a split of ideals. And, the blockchain data structure doesn't really allow for that. So it's got to either go in one direction or another to keep that blockchain going. A good example of this we'll get to later is say, Brian Coin wants to keep the block size to, its original megabytes of 2 megabytes per block. And the Ross Coin developers, as we're calling them, that are a part of Brian Coin say, hey, we want to increase it to 10, Brian. We don't like the 2 megabytes stuff. That's old school. And Brian's like, no, we've got to stay the course. So the Ross Coin breaks off of Brian Coin and develops our own chain of new protocols.
So, by the way, I'm just gonna, when I get my Ross coins, I'm just gonna split off into Brian BV, Ross coin BV,
Oh,
Brian's vision. Anyways, all right, good example. That was good to hit the background of the forks because like I said, today is fork day. All right, let me give a little bit of the background stuff like I usually do. Again, you know, you have the Bitcoin blockchain rolling on at block number 478558 on August 1st, 2017. For each Bitcoin or BTC that someone owned, an owner got 1 BCH. So on that date, BCH or Bitcoin Cash started its own blockchain. And at that time, the Bitcoin Cash started trading at $240 each, while Bitcoin was trading at $2,700 each. So that's what you were talking about earlier, Ross. They don't exactly have the same price. Bitcoin SV forked about a year and a quarter later. So November 15th of 2018, for each Bitcoin Cash, an owner got 1 Bitcoin SV. So again, now we're talking about the Bitcoin Cash blockchain was rolling along for about a year and 3 months, and then Bitcoin SV forked off from it, and we'll talk later about why. But Bitcoin SV then first traded at $96 a coin, while the Bitcoin Cash that it split off from was trading at $289 at that time. All right, Ross,
yeah.
pick it up. Why don't you talk about the Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, and you know, I'll discuss this later in final thoughts, but it's pretty interesting how, you know, the Bitcoin Cash community, I mean, they lasted a year together and then I mean, split. I mean, that's pretty quick turnaround time to really split off and fork. But yeah, as I kind of talked about before with the Ross and Brian coin example, Bitcoin Cash split from Bitcoin in a similar way. Bitcoin started with their block size limit of 1 megabyte. And well, let me take a step back here. So the main reason at the time for talking about a fork or talking about updates was really processing power and scalability. Bitcoin, as we know, is not the fastest coin. So they're trying to, you know, the community was discussing, hey, how do we improve the speed of transactions? Because, you know, we're getting really slow, and as this thing grows, we've got to be able to scale. So one faction said, hey, let's go with a segregated witness protocol. And one was saying, no, we should try to increase the block size. So, and just to touch on segregated witness, or SegWit, as a lot of people call it, and you'll probably see it everywhere. Yeah, segregated witness really is about removing the witness from the block. So you pretty much have 3 people that sign off on the block: the sender, the receiver, and then a witness of the transaction. So naturally they were thinking, well, if we take this witness off, you know, as you know, transactions start to pile up, we can fit more transactions in a block for the, you know, the space that witness allocates on the block. So if we take the witness off, we can put in more transactions in a single block, which is 1 megabyte for Bitcoin still. One group, you know, that won the vote for Bitcoin, but still one group said, hey, we really think we need to increase the block size. That sounds like the better approach. So we're going to split off and do Bitcoin Cash. So that's the main thing that happened there. You know, Bitcoin Cash still uses proof of work algorithm, the SHA-256 algorithm for cryptography. So really, they're very similar in most respects. So.
Yeah. So the as you said, the Bitcoin block size is a maximum of 1 megabyte, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did the BCH go with? Didn't they start out at something like 8, and then that even increased?
Yep, they did start at originally 8 and they increased there. So, and really just to keep in mind, this is a max block size. It's
Right.
not always the case that, you know, every block on Bitcoin is 1 megabyte and every block on Bitcoin Cash is at 8 megabytes. It's only when transactions really start to spike, they start to hit that 8 megabyte window. So
Yeah.
that's just another note for you.
All right. So let's talk about the origins then of Bitcoin SV. So Bitcoin Cash was chugging along, like we said, for a little bit over a year. It was more usable as a cryptocurrency than Bitcoin because its blocks were bigger and its transaction times were lower. So I guess after that year and a half, the maximum size, as we just said, of Bitcoin Cash went up to 32 megabytes. But a group within the Bitcoin Cash community wanted to raise it even more. They wanted to go.
It's not enough.
They wanted to go to 132 megabytes. So, like we said, enough of them were so adamant about that it forked again on November 15th, 2018. Was a fork of a fork, or what I call a forking mess. Boom! Wait for it. There it is.
Ooh.
All right. So,
hurt.
I I love the name SV, Satoshi's Vision, because those of us who so admire Satoshi Nakamoto, sounds great. But, I'm a little bit of a head scratcher. Well, how's that his vision? I mean, the original core Bitcoiners say, no, his vision was 1 megabyte. That's where we kept it. But I haven't heard this argument. I'm sure it's out there. But I suppose the SV people said, no. The original white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto said, I want this to be a peer-to-peer cryptocurrency. He wanted it to be a form of money. And, with the 1 megabyte, as it grew so much, it sort of became where it couldn't be a form of money. We talked about that on the first show, Ross, where, you're really never going to take Bitcoin into the convenience store and buy a pack of gum with Bitcoin. I don't think, unless they make some more changes. So you can still use it as a currency. I mean, on a big transaction where a little bit of a weight is not a problem, and the transaction fees would actually be very small. Be too big for a pack of gum, but if you're buying a high-end Tesla, let's say, the few dollars that the transaction fee would be basically nothing. So anyway, I suppose, I'm assuming that's why it's called SV. It's a good little piece of marketing. So let's talk then about the transactions per second. All this was over block size, which is a little bit, I don't know. It's a little bit crazy. I mean, it's important, but
yeah.
So how did it shake out? So Bitcoin can do about 7 transactions per second. Bitcoin Cash on average can do about 116 per second. This all varies. We're talking averages here. And Bitcoin SV can do 1,300 transactions per second for prolonged periods, and can even peak at about 6,400 transactions per second. So it does make a difference on the transaction speed. And if we get to the point where a cryptocurrency is being used in lieu of everyday currency, and you got to go into the convenience store and get your pack of gum, then maybe it will make a difference.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about what happened then after the forks?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head there, just with transaction speeds. I mean, I don't know. It just really, it didn't matter as much as I was thinking, but I mean,
I'd say so far, right? So far it hasn't.
Yeah. So far, I mean, down the road scaling, yeah. I mean, obviously that 1,300 transaction is going to crush Bitcoin 7. But yeah, as of right now, kind of, we're good. I mean, we did see Bitcoin's, to take a step back to 2018, we did see Bitcoin's network bog down. And I do remember feeling very nervous because I bought my first cold wallet during all the height of that. And I was trying to move all my coins out of an exchange to my cold storage wallet. And I think I, made the transaction at like 10 p.m. And I remember not going to bed until 12 or 1 or 2 because I still hadn't gotten my coins yet to my cold storage. And I eventually woke up the next day and around lunchtime, I got my coins. But, that was during the peak Bitcoin's ever seen, the most transactions it's ever seen. But
yeah. So
hey,
you're sweating it out.
Oh, I was sweating. Yeah. If that was Bitcoin SV, maybe I would, I definitely would have gotten it faster. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and too, if you look at the current market caps of both Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, they're both up there. I think as of this recording, they're about number 5 and number 6 of all the coins. So you can't say they're doing pretty well. And part of that is I think has to be people planning for the future, like when the transaction speed becomes critically important, they feel those coins are going to do better. And of course, we haven't even talked. There's lots of competitors. We did talk about Litecoin, which I'd have to say is a competitor of these Bitcoin forks. And then for Bitcoin, it's kind of interesting and maybe accidental that it doesn't matter that much for Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin is now seen as a store of value and not really as a currency. So the digital gold narrative on Bitcoin still makes it a sought after asset. Obviously, its market cap is 62% or something like that of all cryptocurrencies combined. So you got these other two that forked off. They do something a little bit different. They do something it's a little bit better, but it really isn't hurting Bitcoin.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, just kind of piggybacking a little bit here. I don't know. I feel like, Bitcoin is just well established. That's why it's up there. It's got to be passed eventually. But looking at all the saying all the Litecoins, all the altcoins, you look at coins that have forked from Bitcoin, like Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin Cash. I mean, they're just out of the altcoins. They've been around for a little while, and they're forked off of Bitcoin. So they're just I don't know. They've got that backing, that legacy. So.
Yeah, and we'll probably both touch a little bit more on this on our final thoughts. But
I'm trying to hold back, Brian. I'm trying.
So Ross, some of the things we do on most of our shows so that our listeners can kind of compare the different coins. We try to cover some of the same information. We'll usually talk about the supply and whether there's a maximum and all that, and not much to talk about here. Both Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV have exactly the same circulating supply as Bitcoin, which is 18.4 million. Now that's circulating supply, has some wiggle room there because everybody knows that a lot of Bitcoin, at least, have been lost. Mm-hmm. So circulating supply is actually less than the 18.4 million. Probably fewer Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV have been lost, but the circulating supply of both of the forks are 18.4 million, and they both have the same hard cap of 21 million, same as Bitcoin. So no differentiation there.
Yeah, and just to get into talking about the teams behind these two projects, I'm trying to hold back even with this one, but man, the Bitcoin SV one has got just a little bit of not Tron level of controversy, but it's pretty topical.
Well, it is. Let's before we get there though, on a lot of altcoins, the reason we talk about the team is the teams are the men and women who really get it started. Most of these are not immediately decentralized. They just can't be. You got to have a community to have a decentralized asset. So the
Yeah, you've
team
got
is
to have
really,
those original people kicking it,
yes.
you know?
So
Yeah.
the team is really important, and we've talked about that in all of our coins. Really, except, well, I mean, in Bitcoin is a little bit different. It has an anonymous founder, but the team. So a team behind these forks is a little bit different. You don't really need a team behind a fork. It's just the group that of the Bitcoin node operators or followers, were dissatisfied with one aspect, so they start the new coin, but the team doesn't really matter because it's pretty much then doesn't require the team to get it started. It's already been started. It's
Yeah.
now it's pretty decentralized. So I was going to say that basically that you just change the code. It's not really relevant here, but as far as Bitcoin SV, it does have at least, I suppose he was, I don't know if you call him a founder, but one of the main, I guess, leaders or instigators of the Bitcoin SV fork. So I'm going to let you talk about that, Ross.
Yeah, instigator is a good word for that one. Oh man, it's not the level of sitcom we had with Tron, I would say, but it's definitely one that I don't know, makes you really think on this one. But
Well, it might be. It might be. It might be as bad.
yeah, I don't, this one's just kind of weird. Like so the guy's name is the founder of Bitcoin SV is Craig Wright, who claims to be the real Satoshi Nakamoto. And I just have to say, this is very subject timing to claim you're Satoshi Nakamoto when you just forked your cryptocurrency off Bitcoin Cash. That was forked from Bitcoin to try to claim and vouch for, hey, this is Satoshi's vision. This is what he wanted, and I am Satoshi.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
you're saying maybe that's another reason that it's called SV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's trying to say, "Oh yeah, I'm the true author of the Bitcoin white paper. This is what I really envisioned." And it's just kind of, and there's some other, controversy here. Of course, him claiming that caused Bitcoin SV's price to really jump up. But it goes even further. It's just, there was some claim people were trying to say, well, if you're the real founder of Bitcoin, you should have, these original Bitcoins that were mined. And he tried to say, oh, I lost them and now I have them. Oh, no, I found them. And it's sketchy
And
stuff, Brian.
some of this came up in a lawsuit too. I mean, a lot of the information came out in a lawsuit, and I think he was deposed, and I think he testified, and so some of these claims came out, in the arena of a lawsuit. I'm just trying to think if I was Satoshi Nakamoto. We know he has lots of Bitcoin. He mined a lot of the original Bitcoin. I mean, far less than someone greedy would have. He actually backed off, after a fairly short amount of time and let others get the rewards. But he's got a lot. I mean, millions and tens of millions of dollars worth at today's prices. I'm just thinking if I had that, would I want to do something that might dilute Bitcoin? Which I guess these forks probably would and could, right? Anyways, I don't know. I don't think some people do believe he is Satoshi Nakamoto. I'd say most people do not, and I'm soundly in that camp.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just such subject timing to claim it, so.
Well, and I think the real
But
Satoshi would have some proof. There's some ways you can prove that he hadn't done. So
yeah.
all right, Ross, I think it's time for final thoughts.
Brian, you
And
want to go first? What you got for us?
I will go first. And I'm a little bit on the fence on these two coins. I got to say, of course, I like the fact that they're in a sense an improvement on Bitcoin. I mean, if Bitcoin is a standard, um, they are an improvement because they've improved the transaction time. I don't know that they're really at this point competing with Bitcoin. I don't think they are. I think they're competing with some other altcoins,
Yeah.
and I think they're competing with some good um, altcoins that have made improvements in addition to the block size or the transaction speed. You know, Litecoin is one of them, but then there's lots of others too. Too many to mention, although we'll talk about some on future shows, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, and I do like the fact that at least Bitcoin Cash is now offered by Grayscale. There's a Grayscale trust with Bitcoin Cash, which can only be good. I think Grayscale has done a lot for Bitcoin. You know, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust has brought in more institutional investors than anything else. It just makes it easy. And I like Grayscale because it allowed me to buy some, in a sense, buy some Bitcoin in my retirement account, which I can't do otherwise, or if I can, it would be too much of a problem. Made it easy. So that could help Bitcoin Cash. And you know, I guess they sort of have the Bitcoin brand. They certainly have the Bitcoin, you know, history that's going to be helpful for them. I'll tell you one thing, Ross. I kind of have a preference um, for proof of stake over proof of work, and both of these are proof of work. And I just think, again, I like there's benefits to proof of stake, and there's going to be some proof of stake, or there are proof of stake competitors. So I think they may have a leg up. So my final thoughts are, I would say, you know, they are investable. I'm certainly not ruling them out. I'm not, but on the other hand, I'm not rushing out to buy any. I don't own either one. Um, I might, and you know, I'd say the soonest I would probably pull the trigger on something might be if I want to add some Bitcoin Cash to my retirement account and do that through the Grayscale product or their vehicle, I might do that. But I would say, you know, I think they're both good. They're both legitimate. I guess if I had to pick one over the other, I guess I would go with BitcoinSV because it sort of took the improvement and did it even more. So now Bitcoin Cash is kind of in the middle. But then again, you know, like I said, it has the Grayscale going for it. So my final thoughts are both are investable, but I'm not going to invest in either one anytime soon.
Well, it just seems like I agree with you a lot. I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, it's not I definitely don't touch this stuff.
No.
There are improvements to Bitcoin. In the altcoin world, they're well established. I love the fact that they're you know, huge improvements to Bitcoin, which is amazing. I'll just let you into my headspace here. I don't know that the improvements now outweigh kind of the legacy that Bitcoin has, or the establishment that Bitcoin has. That's really my when I keep thinking about where I put my money in these three. I mean, I still own Bitcoin. I don't own Bitcoin Cash or SV. But that's kind of my thought, is I still like the legacy, the name, the well-establishment of Bitcoin over these two. But they're awesome improvements. I mean, if you're my main thing with Bitcoin is just, you know, it's got to be able to scale if it's going to compete, or any cryptocurrency. So
Yeah.
I like what they tried to do. So
Yeah. And, you know, let's not forget the Lightning Network and things like that. It could be that Bitcoin itself can have the functionality of all these others. But, you know, my biggest concern also is other competitors. You know what I mean? So competitors of these two. So the other altcoins that are really vying for the cryptocurrency title are going to be a problem for me right now to invest in these other two. Although, you know, you could say the same about the platforms. I mean, there's certainly lots of good competitors in the platform, but we both own Ethereum. I think we both own Cardano.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I think, you know, they are on the radar, and we'll see what happens. What do you think, Ross? I think this is time to call it into this podcast.
Yep.
All right. This has been another podcast of The Crypto Masters. Check us out again next week. We'll release another podcast where we discuss another crypto asset.